Welcome to the final session of the 2020 Virtual Government UX Summit. We're going to get started very shortly. As a reminder, this session is being recorded. While I'm talking, please go into the chat window and tell us what agency or organization you're from. While you're in there, you'll find a link to the live captioning if you need it, as well as helpful links to the community of practice and other communities of practice you might want to join. We've had a great program so far this year. As I said, this is the last session, and it's been thrilling to hear from our colleagues in government from all across the country. I want to give a big thank you to everyone who's made this possible, especially my co-chair, Jean Fox, who's been working so hard for this community for so long. I want to thank the staff at GSA who's been supporting us, especially with all of the technical implementation for this virtual event. I want to thank everybody who submitted proposals and who made it so hard for our volunteers, who provided peer review and did all of the program planning so that all of our presenters could take the time and share their experiences with us. I want to thank our session chairs who have been moderating the sessions and making sure that you, our attendees, could ask questions of these great presenters. We've had a great program, and we're sad to say this is the last one. Don't forget, though, that we'll come back next year for another Government UX Summit. Hopefully next year will be in person as well as virtual. This summit has been organized by the User Experience Community of Practice and Digital.gov. The mission of Digital.gov is to transform how government learns, builds, delivers, and measures digital services in the 21st century. They do that by providing people in the federal government with the tools, methods, practices, and policy guidance they need to deliver effective and accessible digital services. The User Experience Community of Practice provides resources for those doing UX work at all levels of US government. It is open to anyone who has an interest in UX and a government email address. You'll find information on joining the community in the chat window. A few more things before we get going. Videos of this presentation and all the other presentations will be available online in about 2 weeks. At the end of this session, you'll find a link in the chat window to a survey, and we hope that you'll take the time to fill it out. It will help us plan for even better summits in the future. Direct all of your questions to the chat. As an attendee, you won't be able to unmute yourself, so if you have any questions for our speakers, put them in the chat, and our happy and cheerful chair will be able to pass them on to our presenters. And as a final reminder, this is being recorded. With that in mind, I'd like to hand this over to our session chair, Jess Scratch. Jess, take it away.
Thanks, Wendy. Yep, welcome again, everyone. I'd like to introduce our speakers today. We have Brooke, Dine, and Kline. Their presentation is called Discovering Part of Something Bigger for the HHS Careers website. Brooke Dine is a public affairs specialist in the Office of the Assistant Secretary of Public Affairs at Health and Human Services. She's the product owner for the HHS Careers site and the HHS intranet. Brooke has more than 20 years of experience in managing digital products and services at HHS, NIH, and the U.S. House of Representatives. Kline is a senior content strategist supporting HHS as a contractor. She's also an award-winning communications professional and Nielsen Norman Group certified UX designer who's been building and managing websites for over 15 years in various roles. She's served as the lead content strategist for the HHS Careers site and spearheaded the Agile discovery process. Working closely with the project's UX design lead, she performed user research and detailed analyses that guided the content development and design work. She was instrumental in coming up with the Part of Something Bigger messaging. We're very excited to have them presenting today. So with that, I will pass it over to Brooke and Katie.
So hello, everybody. Happy Thursday. And Jess, thanks very much for those introductions. And thanks to Jean and Wendy and the Digital.gov team for all this amazing work and pulling off a virtual conference. So Katie and I are really excited to share our journey on discovering part of something bigger for the HHS career site today. Hopefully you're familiar with the work of HHS, especially in the light of our COVID-19 response. We might even convince you to apply for a position at HHS by the end of our presentation. We have more than 80,000 employees across the US and around the world. They support our mission to enhance the health and well-being of all Americans by providing for effective health and human services and fostering sound, sustained advances in the sciences underlying medicine, public health, and social services. In 2019, we collaborated with the Office of Human Resources, or OHR, to develop the new HHS career site. Katie and I will share how we conducted our agile discovery process and the insights that helped to develop the design and the user experience. I'm having trouble, there we go. So we want to start at the beginning and with the project background and how we drove the project forward. So HHS Careers grew out of the Reimagined HHS program, which started in 2017 under former Secretary Price. The program's goal is to transform HHS by advancing innovative solutions, institutionalizing continuous improvement, and enhancing strategic collaboration internally and externally. The Maximize Talent initiative within this program aims to maintain and grow a workforce that is engaged and supported through improved performance, processes, and systems. Where better to start than improving the recruitment process? We also reviewed the goals of the current strategic plan, and we met with OHR leadership to better understand their vision. It's clear that they are dedicated to HHS becoming the employer of choice as a large agency in the federal government. We're consistently ranked as one of the top federal agencies behind NASA in employee satisfaction, and we're always chasing the astronauts. So OHR's definition of success was to create an experience that would increase the number of applicants to the HHS job openings through a robust narrative-driven site that captures our mission. This new narrative would motivate potential applicants to take action and apply for a position. Our Chief Human Capital Officer also considers it a win if HHS inspires someone to become a public servant, even if they end up in another part of government. Katie will speak to the employee evidence and explain our methodology in the future slides. Let's begin with the old career presence on HHS.gov. So what you see here is the jobs opening page within the careers section of HHS.gov. It provided a basic overview of HHS, its agencies, and the various hiring paths available to potential applicants. It was part of the About HHS section of the site's information architecture. However, there was no call to action to apply for a job. There was a link called Link, which I'll challenge you all to find it on the page, which directed potential applicants to the HHS jobs portal on the USA Jobs site. Not really inspiring for someone looking to join one of the top employers in the federal government. While the section did provide a brief overview of our organizational structure, much of the public does not realize that NIH, CDC, FDA, and our other operating divisions and staff divisions are part of the HHS family. Many of our interviewees shared how they were not aware of HHS when they accepted their position at those agencies. Because we're one of the largest departments in the executive branch, we have jobs in almost every series. But someone new to federal hiring does not understand the government's application process. While the previous site provided an overview of the special hiring authorities, we did not have the extensive information on how to apply or the types of jobs they might be interested in and qualified for. Turn it over to Katie.
If we could go back a slide to the user flow.
Let me stop sharing and pull up the wrong one. Darn it. Just a sec.
So while we're doing that, I can just let you know that what we're about to pull up is a user flow that it walks us through the various pages that the user had to take to get to that apply page that Brooke was just talking about. And a lot of users were actually using the search functionality on the site, or they were going through Google and going directly to that apply page and bypassing the careers page, which was actually intended to introduce users to the HHS structure and then the benefits and incentives for working at HHS, which is key information that was being left out for prospective employees. And then once they were on that page, the users were spending only a couple of minutes with the contents, and then half of the users were exiting the page. And of the exiting users, only about 12,000 were going to usajobs.gov. And this is based on data pulled from January 1st, 2019 to July 2019. So not a lot of people going to usajobs.gov, probably related to the hidden link. So what were users looking for in an HHS career site? That's what we asked ourselves. And we did this through initial conversations with HR and also through the Google Analytics analysis, like what we just showed you with the user flow. And it served as a guidepost for framing some of our questions, such as, are users interested in learning how to apply since it's the topic of the most popular page? Or is that page just the most findable through search? We also found out that through call center inquiries that there was some confusion around the application, interviewing, and hiring process for federal jobs. So we had the hypothesis that prospective employees want to know what to expect during the application and hiring process. And we also got onboarding feedback that suggested that new HHS employees were unclear where their office fell in the HHS structure. So we assumed that there was confusion around the structure of HHS and that education on the organization would be beneficial early on in a career site. So we set out to test these hypotheses and to figure out the goals and vision for the new site. And we did this through two sets of interviews. First, we interviewed subject matter experts who were HR professionals in various operating divisions or agencies in HHS. And we wanted to ask them questions around the vision for an HHS career site and on what they thought a successful site would look like. They had been in their current positions between 2.5 and 8 years, but their experience in the federal government ranged from 6 to 34 years. Their areas of expertise included recruitment, diversity, workforce planning, human capital, outreach marketing, and operations. Then the subject matter experts actually recommended various employees that they thought we should speak with for a second round of interviews. And for those interviews, we asked questions that explored the participants' views of HHS, their experience of the hiring process in general, their feelings around public health, and the benefits of working for the government. They held a variety of roles, such as administrative assistant, chief medical officer, and communications specialist. And they came from all of the operating divisions except for CMS. So we captured all of these responses in writing and did a theme analysis within each group and then across both groups. And we noticed quickly that the themes within the groups were starting to overlap across the groups. So one of the major themes that emerged overall was of public service. Participants thought of it as both an important message to communicate about HHS and also as a driver for employment and retention. We also heard personal stories of employees who applied to work at HHS because they knew of people who worked at HHS or knew of the mission of HHS from previous experiences. So, for example, participants told stories of loved ones who worked with researchers who were willing to review lab test results during cancer treatment. Another participant talked about the respect they felt when they were trained by the CDC to evaluate and treat patients abroad while they were in the Navy. So in addition to the user research, we also know that word of mouth is a great way of adding credibility to a brand, and that people relate with characters and stories and put themselves in their shoes. And knowing all of this, we decided one of the approaches for the site should be to highlight these stories so that they are no longer just, oral history. And we knew we wouldn't have a problem procuring the stories because all of the respondents gave us a reason for wanting to work at HHS. And so many of them reported feeling inspired by the mission.
Katie gave you an overview of all the great insights that we were able to find during this process and in the analysis. And so we shared the results with our OHR leadership. And this research really helped to validate our initial hypothesis and share those new insights. We found that the interviewees were very enthusiastic about some of the things we had hoped to accomplish, such as making it easier for the external community to find job opportunities, ensuring that there was a clear organizational structure around our 12 operating divisions and the Office of the Secretary, and then also provide education around becoming a federal employee and create paths for those prospective employees who want to work in the public sector. The new insights from the SMEs were really critical in helping us sort of grow the vision of the site. They were emphasizing the global nature of HHS jobs. They're not just in DC, they're not just in the DMV area or Atlanta, they're all over the country and they're around the world. At any one time, we have between 1,500 and 5,000 employees overseas doing anything from research at academic institutions and working as health attachés in embassies to responding to crises such as hurricanes, Ebola, and COVID. Then they really wanted to showcase the diversity of the workforce and the community's inclusive nature. With 80,000 employees, we're really fortunate. We have such an incredible, diverse population who's talented and smart and really works on inclusion and to solve these problems that we're addressing. And then they also wanted the site to serve as a place where current employees could find new career opportunities at HHS. Ideally, we want you to come in and stay. There's a lot of opportunity across all of the operating divisions. And so we took all of this information to the OHR leadership and they immediately got behind these goals. And they also wanted to showcase, they added one, they wanted to showcase the superpowers of our employees because we're passionate about public service and extremely dedicated to improving the health and well-being of the American people. So we took those goals and the next step was to solidify them and define our minimum viable product or MVP for this new site. We had a limited budget from OHR and a short time to finish building it out. And so we took the goals and we mapped them to the to the features we were hoping to accomplish. So we really wanted to create a narrative emphasizing those superpowers and the commitment to public service by our employees. We wanted to build a mini architecture that creates multiple approaches to finding the right position in the right agency. We wanted to leverage the placement of user flows to guide prospective employees through examples of public service opportunities. We wanted to speak to that one HHS spirit that featured both the operating and staff divisions, which are in the Office of the Secretary. We really wanted to emphasize plain language because it's critical to help educate the visitors on the benefits of working for government. And then weave in visually and in our messaging, the global reach of HHS and its core mission. And then lastly, support diversity and inclusion through visual representation and accessibility of information. And this is where Katie makes me cry.
So as I mentioned, at the heart of the goals is this idea of storytelling. So I wanted to share some examples of what we heard from the participants that really inspired us during the ideation phase around the theme for the messaging of the site. Starting from the bottom, I've always, since I was little, wanted to be a public servant. I wanted to make the world better. I get a sense of purpose when I get home from a day of work at HHS. What I am most proud of is knowing I directly contribute to the mission by helping HHS hire employees to advance HHS's great mission. The employees here are dedicated who work hard and passionately every day. I love how HHS is there to support and help the public, to keep them safe. I prefer HHS over the private sector because the focus isn't on making money. It's about helping our citizens, researching what we can to help them be the best they can. I'm a caretaker type of personality. I know I don't have the heart or the stomach to do the work that nurses do. I'm not scientific enough to find the cure for cancer, but supporting the people who do that work is what matters. I can be the beaker. I can buy the beaker. I can make sure you know what to expect with work overseas. I love participating in something bigger that will help improve the world overall. And it was this idea of public service that the employees feel connected to something larger than themselves that led us to the theme of be a part of something bigger. This also highlights the idea that agencies are all a part of one HHS and together they all make a difference in health and human services. But it wasn't just the messaging that was inspired by the goals we teased out from the interviews, it was also the structure of the site. In the IA, we wanted to have an overview of the mission because it was such a motivator for so many people we interviewed. We wanted to explain the agencies and the organizational structure and even talk about the value for working for the government in general. Then at the heart of the site is the stories. And then we also wanted to specifically call out the audiences who have different hiring paths and really go into detail about the application, interview, and hiring process to be as transparent as possible, since this was an area we identified as being confusing for prospective employees. Then, of course, the job opening section, which Brooke will walk us through.
So Katie's told you about how we want to structure the site. We want to share with you 4 of the user journeys that we mapped out as part of the prep to figure out how to make this happen. So the first is the concern of how does a potential applicant find the right job to apply to? Our concept was to build a search interface for jobs on the career site instead of sending them directly to USA Jobs. We wanted to leverage the API to allow people to view the current job openings, which we typically have between 850 and 1,100 on a given day, or that's what I've noticed through this project. And then be able to filter these positions by keywords, country, city, agencies, hiring paths, and pay scale. This would allow the site to be elastic and expandable, and down the road, there might be an opportunity to generate queries for openings via stories so that people understood how to apply for a specific position, such as an epidemiologist. The user story or the user journey also allows the applicant to find the right position within HHS and its agencies, view the job description, and then go to USA Jobs to begin the application process. So the next is finding a position in an operating division, or optiv in our jargon. While OHR is in the Office of the Secretary, they collaborate across HHS on recruitment and employee engagement with the other HR offices. And we wanted to support this effort by providing opportunities for a potential applicant to find a position within their desired agency. So this concept demonstrates more transparency about not only the organizational structure, but it helps the applicants find the right agency to match their potential career path. Applicants may choose to stay on the career site or go explore the agency's career site to focus their search. One of the biggest goals of the MVP was to create a narrative emphasizing HHS employees' altruism, passion, and commitment to public service. We wanted to tell stories, personal stories of our employees. The goal was to weave a story about their journey to the current position, the role they play within their agency, their responsibilities, and the career path they took. By breaking down these stories into relatable spaces, such as the lab, the office, or in the field, potential applicants can begin to imagine themselves in these roles at these agencies. And it speaks to the power of narrative that Katie mentioned earlier. If they're interested in applying, they would be able to select the related position types or career paths to find out more and apply for a position. Lastly, for the last user journey that we'll share, HHS is committed to diversity and inclusion in its hiring practices. Potential candidates may not understand the different hiring paths available to them when applying for a government position. We developed a path for these candidate pools to learn how to apply depending on their qualifications. Once they understand which hiring path they might pursue as a student, a recent graduate, a Native American, a person with a disability, a veteran, or another audience, they can search for jobs within that specific audience. By providing clear explanations of the application process and qualifications, we wanted to reduce the burden on these different audiences as they apply for a position. If we're successful, we can increase the number of applicants to a position and create a more diverse pool to choose from.
So the structure was deliberate not only in the information architecture, but on the page level as well. This is the home page. And we knew from the beginning we wanted to have a search element right at the top to make the call to action salient. We had a blurb describing the different work being performed at HHS to draw in users. And we wanted to highlight the global nature of the workforce with the map. So how did this translate to the MVP? And I think we were all pretty happy with it. And we wanted to walk you through that.
We change screens here.
So here we have a group of people coming together to form a heart, which is representative of public service. But it also actually connects to this idea to the left. At HHS, bioengineers are building devices to monitor blood oxygen levels in athletes. And we also, like I said, had the search functionality front and center. Then we had 3 navigational elements for this page that we thought were very important pieces: the stories, the global aspect, the locations, and then what it's like to work with at HHS. And Brooke will go into detail about the stories.
So the stories, we wanted to sort of give an entry on the homepage for the latest stories. We currently only have 3 stories up. We're coordinating with OHR to develop more and get those out as well. But really stories, again, reiterating this from the office, from the lab, and from the field. And so as you can tell, we'll have a short snippet here in a card with a photo. These don't have photos yet. And then linking directly to that story.
This is currently a static image that shows actual positions that are open at HHS around the world. And we hope that in the future, this will be an interactive map that will update in real time. Then we actually took those quotes because they were so powerful, and we got permission to put them on the website.
This is the one that makes me cry every time. And then we also wanted to feature some of the multimedia that we have. There was a I Am at HHS campaign in the past, so we've been featuring that. And then we're also going to start featuring, we produce a lot of video, not only within the Office of the Secretary, but across the department. So there's a lot of rich content that we don't need to recreate. We can simply plug and play. So, sorry, I hope I'm not making people terribly sick by scrolling. In terms of providing an entry to learn more about working at HHS, we have a very basic overview where we share the mission, benefits, the agencies, and then information on working in government. In terms of agencies, this is really that page that we want to make it clear this family within HHS. And so we give a basic overview of, you know, how many employees, where we're located. We're in the 10 regional offices, like I'm sure your department is, or department or agency has representation there as well. And then show the different agencies within that and give a brief overview, and then also include an overview of the positions you might find in there. And I can show you CDC, which has, this is something we're trying to get to, where they have a page dedicated to explaining health scientists, and one about medical officers, one about the senior executive service. And so each blurb is supposed to really give that overview of, this is the agency, this is where their headquarters is, and this is the type of work they do. And then these are potential positions that you can learn more about and understand, because we all know I'm a public affairs specialist currently. I've been a librarian. I've been a supervisory librarian. I've been a technical information specialist, all doing very similar work to what I do now. So, you know, it can be very confusing to somebody who's not familiar with government. So we want to make that process as easy as possible. And so we have the different operating divisions. I do want to call out the Indian Health Service. They are, if you know anybody who is a nurse, a doctor, anything to do with public and the public health field, or health professionals, they are looking to hire. And so it's a great place to work. The mission is incredible. And again, throughout the US, Alaska, and Hawaii. So, and then we'll jump to the stories section. Again, this was something, it was really something that became apparent of how to tell the stories. I see a lot of examples across government of how the departments and agencies and organizations are doing this. And I think it really helps to break down those barriers so people understand, you know, what it is we do and the mission-driven nature of our work. And so we try to give just that basic overview, again, stories from the field and how the global workforce might impact our mission. In this case, we're featuring a woman named Denise. She's an anthropologist with the CDC, and she works on Ebola, or has worked on Ebola in the past. And then this is, I'll go back to that landing page to show it to you, but basically, ideally we'll have some sort of image and then really show this career path that she's been on, what she's doing currently, what she's done there, and where she was before she came, and her interests, her education, things like that, so that, you know, a young scientist or anthropologist could look at this and go, oh, I want to do that. I just got out of the Peace Corps. So, you know, this allows it, and then learn how to become a Peace Corps or apply as a Peace Corps person, which Katie will talk about in a moment. And I want to just go back to the landing page. And so the goal is that we're featuring the news stories here and on the homepage. You know, right now we're again, call to action to go see job openings, and then providing the ability to get back to the other, or go to the other landing pages. All right, how to apply.
So for how to apply, we really wanted to first go over the general process for everybody for applying to a job, not just at HHS, but in general for the government. And then after that, we wanted to highlight the specific hiring paths that have specific criteria associated with them. So for example, if we go with Native Americans, for example, we go into detail about the Indian Health Service and Indian preference and how it differs from veterans preference. We also have a veterans page that goes into detail about non-competitive hiring versus competitive hiring and veterans preference, building your resume, like how you would use your experience in the military to build a resume that would be more specific for a government position. And we separated out recent grads from students because there are different qualifications there, different experiences. Students have programs like pathways that they would be able to apply for. So just a lot of different information, very specific for the different hiring paths that we wanted to highlight.
And I think one of the things that's been really great is HR has the flexibility to grow this. So they're working on the Join the COVID-19 response. So we threw this page up and they'll be listing, they've included the application, or they will be including the application process once those positions are ready to post. So.
And then for job openings, we wanted to provide a really clean and user-friendly way of searching and filtering positions. So you can filter by location, agency, within HHS, hiring paths, pay scale, grade, and then it gives you a brief summary before taking you to usajobs.gov. And eventually, we hope to have these as individual pages, which will highlight mostly the job description aspect of it and less on the application process part of it, since we go over that in different sections of the site. And then usajobs.gov will fill in that detail when you go to that page as well. So really pulling out the salient, making the job description information the most salient part.
So I'm not going to switch, or well, I can switch back to the presentation if there are questions about that, but I figure I'll stay on the site for a bit. I think the big thing, Katie and I both agree, this was probably, for me, it was one of the most rewarding projects I've ever worked on in my career. I've been fortunate to be on a lot of projects at various organizations where leadership was just amazing, encouraging, got rid of roadblocks. It was refreshing to work with the OHR leadership, the vision that they brought, the understanding when we were presenting the analytics and the evidence, around the users, they just immediately got it. Like there was no convincing them of it. So it was a really unique experience, I think, to really bring something to life very quickly and with just so much backing. So I don't know, Katie, if you want to speak to that at all.
This was a really great project that I think allowed us, even given the short time frame that we had, to go through the full discovery process and do it properly and do the user research that needed to be done, doing the stakeholder interviews and finding that vision that served as a guidepost. And I think it really set a great example as a project that we should look to in the future for other projects.
I guess with that, thank you guys for attending, and we're happy to take questions.
Yes, thank you guys so much for walking us through all of that. The new site is awesome, and hearing how you guys have integrated the stories from everyone that you spoke to into the site and sharing that with us is really inspiring. And we've seen comments to that effect in the chat, and there are a few questions. First question that came in is a detailed question. On your homepage, what tool did you use to build the map?
The map. So the reason that you see an image is that this was a good lesson learned for me as a product owner. And Katie can speak to our decision matrix that we created as we were going. We went down the road of trying to, I can't even remember, we looked at so many different things. We initially thought we would do, gosh, Katie, can you remember? We looked at leaflet, we looked at Google, duh. But this is where a short time frame doesn't do you any service, because in attempting, everything was moving so quickly. Additionally, we were rolling out the HHS intranet. To say that we had multiple jobs, both on the contracting end and on the Fed end, it would be an understatement. I think many of you can respond or really relate to that. So we landed on Tableau because that was something we had in-house. And then we learned that we didn't have access to the public server, which is what we would need. We went through the process of trying to get pricing for it and found that it just economically wasn't feasible. So that became something we had to put in the backlog, because that the process to get there was a bit painful. And it's something that I wish the lesson learned would have been, and this is where I made an egregious error as a product owner, really sitting down with our tech ops team and our contracting team and going through these features and saying, hey, this is what we want to use. What are the security concerns? Are there contracting concerns? So in the future, we're actually in the process of, my colleague Katie Mesner is the product owner for HHS.gov, and we'll be looking to redesign that. And it's one of the things I'm putting in our backlog is I want some sort of mapping feature. And one thing we've thought about is leaflets. So I'm telling you a very long-winded story of we didn't really get to implement the map yet. So.
All right. Okay, on the same topic of keeping it with your design decisions and whatnot, there's a question about the HHS site having a similar look to USA Jobs, and was that intentional?
So it does have a similar look, and this also speaks to the time frame. So it has a similar look in terms of how the API that we dragged in and how we position things. Again, what you're seeing is an MVP. So a lot of the additional features that we wanted to include, we weren't able to get to, and those are in the backlog, such as, you know, generating a page where people could actually go and read the entire list like you would at USA Jobs. Part of the reason that it does have that look and feel is the familiarity with USA Jobs, but then also we wanted to keep people on our site for as long as possible so they could get a sense of HHS and not get dumped into USA Jobs, where we might be competing with other things. And Katie, do you want to speak to that at all?
Sure. Yeah, I think a lot of it is consistency. We wanted to kind of be a bridge between the HHS site and usajobs.gov. So we're kind of a stepping stone here, where we're getting people familiar with the process of what they're going to expect to see on usajobs.gov. We heard in the interviews that there was that the usajobs.gov site had a lot of nuances that were that you needed to learn. And so we wanted to create an environment where we were kind of teaching people along the way. And there's actually a page specifically in this, in the IA, that goes through like what to expect when you go to usajobs.gov and how to navigate the site as well.
Gotcha.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. There's a few questions related to filters. So I'll read through those and maybe you can walk us through that section of the site a little bit. Yeah, the first question is noticing that there isn't a filter for type of job, i.e. medical versus administrative, et cetera, and assuming that can be done by free text, but curious if you can talk through the choice not to build a filter for that, or generally the logic behind the filter shown, not shown. And then I'll bundle these together for you. The other one is about just wanting to see how the UI behaves as you're with the filters. So that can maybe be addressed.
Okay. Katie, do you want to go first, or do you want me to jump in?
Yeah, so we wanted to scale back the options. As I said, this is supposed to be a stepping stone, so not to overwhelm the user. There are a lot of options on usajobs.gov, and that's great because you can get into those nuances. But when you're just starting off and you just want, you're a prospective employee, this was supposed, this ideally has a campaign around it that is bringing in people who never maybe thought of being a public servant before, and now they're just kind of dipping their toe into the idea of being a government employee, a federal employee, and so they're now exploring that a little bit. And so we wanted to be that that bridge that's like, here's some of the basics, here's some of the stuff you need to know, and then when you're ready to get more into the details of the different filters, then here's usajobs.gov. Does that sound about right, Brooke?
Yeah, and we do have plans for making, to your point, we really do want to have the ability to be able to map, if somebody types in doctor, a lot of this happens anyway on the back end, but that pulls in physician. And also, yeah, I mean, if you've tried to, even as a Fed, find a new job, the series don't make sense. The titles, like this, what on earth is a quality management director? Obviously it has to do with managing the quality of something, but it really is a new world for people. And so, and the other thing is the time constraint really did limit us in terms of what we could deliver. We spent a lot more time in discovery so that we could build out this backlog, but we only had a small budget from OHR, and so it was really meant to be an MVP project. And these are things we're hoping to build in the future, because it is critical to people who are new, especially the physician part. My vision is that once we're able to, I really want under these stories to have, from the office, depending on the stories, they'll have a couple different series there that people understand what they can apply to. So does that help answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, just wanted to know that thinking, I think, behind the filters. I think that.
If only I had more time and money.
Yeah, and another question about how the keyword search works. Does it scan through the text of the position's responsibilities section, or what does it cover? Yeah,
so it's currently, here, we'll show you, because if it's still working, let me see. You can see as I type, it's mainly on the job summary currently that it's pulling in. I don't think I can't remember. I'll have to ask. Honestly, it's, we launched this in late December as a soft launch. And so one of the things we do is as we type in keywords, you'll see them there. I'm trying to remember.
You say late December?
Yeah, so we soft launched it late December. We've been trying to do some cleanup, and then we were supposed to have, Katie alluded to, a social media campaign that was supposed to start March 17th. You all know what happened on March 16th. So we've been, as I'm sure a lot of you are, everything COVID now. So it really, OHR has been in that lane. We've been in that lane. So again, frustration as a product owner of, you do your best to create this quality product and keep it going, but then real life happens. So it's something we're trying to circle back to at some point in the future, and I can't even say when. But yes, it's looking for those the different terms you might set or include, whatever it is. I think it might just be currently on the job summary, and then it will in real time filter those down.
Gotcha.
And that we've got a bit of a bug right now with the pay scale, so we're working on fixing that with the API pulling the information in.
Gotcha. Can you speak a little bit about how you, like since launching, how you've been either tracking the effectiveness of the redesign or evaluating it?
Katie can speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, so as Brooke said, COVID has kind of made things a little interesting. We've had an uptick in general to the HHS.gov site for traffic related to COVID. And as a result, there's been we assume as a result, there's been an increase in traffic to all areas of the site, including careers. So we hesitate to say that any uptick in traffic is related to the redesign because there's also been an uptick around the site in general. We have seen an increase in the average time on page. So that's a promising indicator that people are reading the content and actually using the filters. So there's that. But like I said, it's a little hard to, without some like further research, tease out exactly what the source of the increase in traffic is.
Okay, that totally makes sense. Do you have a sense of, within the context of the site, how people are using it and like which pages are being accessed more than others, things like that?
People are definitely going to the current job openings section, which is what we want. So that's exciting.
Okay, great.
One of the things we need to coordinate with HR. We really want to see if our assumption that it would increase applications, it's hard because we've created the search interface on our site. Then somebody goes to apply at usa.gov and they either drop or they continue on. And then if they get hired, they go into USA staffing. So, and then they're in our system. So how do you track across multiple systems that aren't owned by the same department or agency? Can be difficult. It's once we are able to stand up the campaign, we really want to start having that as sort of the official baseline and see how the storytelling and then coupling that with a social media campaign can increase our numbers. Qualtrics is on my list of things to do. It's towards the top of the backlog. So we have it on the rest of the site, but we really want to create a survey that's specific to careers and not generally HHS.gov.
Great. Could you guys talk a little bit about your process when you were going from the early part of your discovery process and making your way towards your themes and your goals, kind of what those methods and process look like to get from A to B?
Yeah, so there's always, I think, this big question in UX and even content strategy about how do you structure unstructured data. And that was our biggest challenge because we had a lot of qualitative information that we were sorting through. And so we started with a script, and it was really about how we framed the questions. And I would be happy, I don't know if this is cool with everybody, but I would be happy to share like some of those questions if anyone's interested. But we framed them very specifically so that they were that they were getting at very specific feedback. And then we were able to take the feedback and match it to like a specific category. So we knew that there were like certain categories that were emerging organically, like diversity was a big one. Obviously I talked about public service, but we started noticing these words were repeating throughout. And so we pulled those out and then started quantifying the actual like terms from the scripts. And that's how we did that. And there's like we have like a chart where we did like a gap analysis of what was, not a gap analysis, but like a analysis of what like every single interviewee and which terms they mentioned, and then tallied up all of that and added it up and did math. So
And
without having the visuals, it's really hard to describe.
right. And they also did a lot of content auditing of all the career sites, not only across operating divisions, but looking at other departments and agencies, looking to the outside sector, finding out what the OHR folks thought was successful. So there's a lot of building on sort of people's concepts of what they think they like. Everybody always, I don't know what it is. Everybody loves NIH, and I come from NIH, so I get it. But I always, it's like, and we want what NIH has. I'm like, okay. I think it really was critical. It really helped us. And our product manager, the Scrum Master, who worked with me, was very much like, we've got to stay in the discovery period as long as possible so we really get this information. And that it was nice to do that for once. So
yeah, sounds great. It sounds like it paid off for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's comment, sharing the script would be amazing. So if there's a format we can do that, maybe through the COP, that would be great. And you've also been getting comments that the site looks great and the work is fantastic. So we're really grateful that you guys could share all of this with us today. We've got 2 minutes, so I think I'm going to pass it back to Wendy.
Thank you, Brooke and Katie, so much for sharing this awesome story. I used to do work with several HHS optives, and this was just great to see. And Jess, thank you for chairing today. Thank you, everybody who attended. Make sure you check out the COP if you're not already a member. I hope to see you there in the upcoming months, and I hope that every single one of you considers proposing for next year's Government UX Summit. We'll be starting planning for it soon. We'll need another co-chair, and I'm hoping you all have a peaceful rest of your week and rest of 2020.
And go apply for a job at HHS.
Be good public servants. Jean, do you want to say anything before we all log off?
No, I'm good. Just thank you to everyone. And
Extra thanks to GSA.
thanks to GSA. Thank you to everyone. And it's exciting to get to see the videos when they come out, because a lot of really, really great presentations this week.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Be safe.
All right. Bye-bye.